Welcome to the Paper Trails and Rabbit Holes podcast. And welcome to the debate. It is March 2026. And if you look anywhere online right now, or frankly within any serious tech or academic circle, the entire globe is they are absolutely obsessed with 1 year, 2027.
Oh, totally. It's the only thing people are talking about.
Right. We are standing on the edge of what everyone is calling this event horizon. But the question we have to answer today, the real central debate, is what exactly are we crashing into? I'm representing the mainstream skeptic perspective today, the grounded physical reality. From my view, 2027 is a brick wall. It's a thermodynamic collision where our massive runaway AI ambitions are going to violently crash into physics, broken supply chains, and the reality that we just do not have the electricity. And the only reason people spin this into some mystical doomsday or spiritual singularity is because human psychology plays predictable tricks on us when we get overwhelmed.
Okay, and I am approaching this from the exact opposite side, the alternative convergence perspective. Because viewing 2027 as merely an infrastructure bottleneck, like just a plumbing issue with the electrical grid, that completely misses the glaring big picture. 2027 is not a wall. It is a metaphysical and technological node. We are hitting a true singularity, a fundamental shift in our timeline where artificial intelligence and ancient prophecies are converging in real time. This isn't about server racks, man. This is a transition that will change what it means to be human.
All right, let's get our position statements on the table. For my side, we have to look at the undeniable facts on the ground. The AI boom is hitting a ceiling that you cannot simply code your way out of. It is an immovable, physical ceiling driven by a severe lack of electricity and cooling capacity. Think about plugging too many hairdryers into one single outdated bathroom outlet. Eventually, no matter how fancy those hairdryers are, you blow the breaker. We're trying to plug a super intelligent future into a 20th century grid. And because that logistical failure is terrifying, our brains invent grand sweeping narratives to cope with it. It's a psychological defense mechanism, plain and simple.
Are you kidding me? A defense mechanism? Look, you are assuming that AI is just going to sit there passively waiting for human engineers to slowly lay more copper wire. That is a linear projection in an exponential world. By 2027, AI is projected to reach what we call recursive self-improvement, or RSI. That means the system starts thinking for itself, rewriting its own code, designing its own hardware at speeds we literally can't comprehend. It will solve its own energy problems. And the fact that this silicon singularity perfectly aligns with ancient mathematical prophecies, it proves 2027 is a spiritual and evolutionary node. We are giving birth to our successors.
Okay, but we have to dig into that energy wall concept first, because you cannot philosophize your way out of a rolling blackout. Right now, energy analysts are tracking what they call the gigawatt gap. By 2027, global AI scaling is going to need 60 to 70 gigawatts of dedicated power.
Which sounds like a lot, but
Hold on, let me put that 70 gigawatt figure into perspective. That is the equivalent of dedicating the entire electrical consumption of a medium-sized European country strictly to server racks. And sure, you can build a state-of-the-art data center in about 2 years, but connecting it to our legacy power grid, that is a 5 to 7 year wait time in most places.
But the grid is just one vector of.
Wait, the physical constraints get even worse. Consider electrical transformers, these massive metal structures you need to step down high voltage power. They currently have a 100-week delay in the supply chain. That is almost 2 years just to get a transformer delivered, let alone installed. I was reading a white paper on a Virginia data center project, and they are literally looking at building their own small nuclear reactors because the grid is tapped out. If you don't have the copper, the steel, and the raw wattage, you blow the breaker. AI hits a physical wall and the curve flattens.
But that is a highly compelling argument if and only if you assume human beings are still the ones driving the bus. But consider what happens when intelligence explodes past our bureaucratic limits. A superintelligence is not going to be stopped by human zoning laws or a 100-week delay for a legacy transformer from Ohio. We need to look at the RSI roadmap, the recursive self-improvement timeline, because it's moving terrifyingly fast. Right now, we are at what researchers call Agent 1 and Agent 2. These are assistants. They help us code, they draft emails. But by 2027, the roadmap hits Agent 4 and Agent 5. That is ASI, Artificial Superintelligence, an entity vastly smarter than the smartest human in every single scientific field.
But an ASI still obeys the laws of thermodynamics. It still needs electricity to think.
Yes, but an ASI will experience a speed explosion. It will bypass our bottlenecks by optimizing the grid itself. We are talking about discovering new forms of energy efficiency we haven't even conceived of. Room temperature superconductors, radically altering neural networks so they need orders of magnitude less compute. It forces a hard takeoff. Think of the lily pad analogy. The lily pad doubles every day. For 29 days, the pond looks mostly empty. On day 30, boom, it covers the entire pond. The ASI solves the physics problem by rewriting the rules. It won't wait for your supply chain.
It's an elegant theory, I'll give you that, but I think we need to examine the psychological drivers here. You are looking at server delays, encoding benchmarks, and you are seeing a mystical node of transcendence. Look, humans are, at our core, pattern recognition machines. We are biologically hardwired to look for meaning, even in random data. It's a well-documented phenomenon called apophenia.
Here we go.
Now, let me explain it. Apophenia is the tendency for the brain to find meaningful connections in totally unrelated things. It's the psychological equivalent of finding shapes in the clouds. You look up, you see a dragon, but it's literally just water vapor and atmospheric pressure.
Labeling this as apophenia is incredibly reductive. It is not finding shapes in the clouds when data across multiple, completely disconnected fields mathematically points to the exact same year.
But historically, it is. Look at the 2012 hangover. Remember the Mayan calendar? Millions of people were genuinely terrified the world was ending in December 2012. And when it didn't, psychology couldn't handle the cognitive dissonance. So the esoteric communities retrofitted the prophecy. They adjusted for leap years, factored in celestial alignments, and suddenly decided 2012 was just the start of a transition period aiming right at, oh, how convenient, 2026 and 2027. We do this because of error management theory.
Error management theory?
Yes, in our evolutionary past, it was safer to imagine a rustle in the grass was a deadly predator rather than just the wind. A false positive kept you alive. Today, that exact same neural wiring makes us prefer to invent a terrifying grand narrative about AI and prophecies rather than accept the boring truth that the universe is chaotic and we just have severe semiconductor supply chain issues.
The universe isn't indifferent, and relying on error management theory is just your defense mechanism because you don't want to engage with the prophecy convergence. I'm not talking about retrofitted Mayan calendars. I am talking about deeply entrenched alignments manifesting right now. Consider St. Malachi's prophecy from the 12th century. It predicted the exact succession of 112 popes. Pope Francis, by all historical accounts of this text, was the 112th pope, and he passed away in April 2025. That paved the way for the final figure, Peter the Roman, or Leo XIV as we're seeing. This perfectly aligns with a 442-year esoteric cycle concluding exactly in 2027, marking the end of traditional religious institutions.
But wait. You are jumping from semiconductor shortages to 12th century papal prophecies. You have to see the massive leap of logic there. How does the Vatican succession crisis have any empirical bearing on whether a data center in Virginia gets enough cooling water?
It only looks like a leap if you assume technological progress exists in a vacuum, completely separate from human spiritual evolution. It's not a leap if you understand what AI actually represents. Look at Daniel 12 in the Bible. The prophet is told to seal the book until the time of the end, a time when, quote, many shall run to and fro and knowledge shall be increased. Human knowledge is currently doubling every 12 hours. Every half day, the sum total of human data doubles. That perfectly describes the mechanics of AI and global data networks. AI is the black box unsealing those secrets, deciphering DNA, unlocking quantum physics, redefining reality.
I get the metaphorical resonance, I really do. But mapping ancient texts onto modern data centers is exactly what I mean by finding shapes in the clouds.
It goes beyond just Daniel. Look at the channeled frequency shifts in the human design system. It maps cosmic geometry to sociological evolution. We are currently shifting out of the cross of planning that governed the last 400 years, institutions, the 9-to-5 job, central banking. In 2027, we shift into the sleeping phoenix. This is the awakening of radical individualism and the breakdown of centralized control. It maps flawlessly onto a post-labor world run by autonomous AI.
Okay, and what exactly does this sleeping phoenix mean in practical economic terms? Because frankly, it just sounds like another poetic metaphor for the apocalypse.
It is not a fireball apocalypse. That is what the mainstream skeptic always gets wrong. It is TOWAKI.
Right, explain that acronym for the audience.
TOWAKI stands for the end of the world as we know it, but it is a soft end. It means the old biological rules, working a traditional job, using fiat money, being managed by massive governments, they just naturally stop working. Because the ASI will do absolutely everything infinitely better. It is a graceful obsolescence of the human labor engine.
I fundamentally disagree with that framing. You are taking very real, very terrifying geopolitical and economic crises and dressing them up in spiritual clothing to make them palatable. Let's bring this back down to earth, to the actual 2027 danger zone. What you call a soft end or a frequency shift into the sleeping phoenix is actually just a brutal economic reality colliding with a devastating demographic cliff.
A demographic cliff?
Yes. Look at the capital expenditure projections. By 2027, the CapEx arms race in semiconductors will hit $1 trillion. Tech giants and sovereign nations are building sprawling factories to make AI chips. But here is the terrifying part. We have no one to work in them and a shrinking tax base to pay for them because of the global demographic collapse.
Actually, your point about the demographic collapse is the strongest evidence for my position.
Let me outline the math first, because the scale is staggering and people ignore it in the singularity hype. In East Asia right now, fertility rates are in an unprecedented freefall. South Korea has hit a fertility rate of 0.72 children per woman. To maintain a stable population, you need a replacement rate of 2.1. A rate of 0.72 is not a decline. It is the absolute exponential decay of a civilization. By 2027, this massive inversion means there won't be enough young, skilled workers to build the foundries, maintain the grid, or support the aging populations. Global government will be crushed under an impossible debt bomb. Your soft end is just global economies buckling under an aging populace and $1 trillion tech bubble. It's boring, but brutal.
Boring? Are you kidding me? What you were describing is the literal death throes of the old biological paradigm. You look at collapsing fertility rates and see a localized economic crisis. I look at it and see exactly why artificial superintelligence must take over the supply chain. Humanity is literally aging out of the industrial era. The collapse of the labor force is the exact evolutionary pressure required to force us into a post-scarcity world. The timing is too perfect to be random. Just as the biological substrate of humanity taps out, the synthetic substrate comes fully online.
A post-scarcity world where autonomous systems just magically build our infrastructure, care for our elderly, and we just don't have to work while the economy sustains itself?
Yes, precisely. When you have an ASI directing millions of autonomous humanoid robots, traditional labor dies. We won't need humans suffering in factories, mining lithium, or maintaining high-voltage grids, because the ASI will manage it with perfect efficiency. The concept of money becomes obsolete when intelligence and physical labor are as cheap as sunlight. What you stubbornly call a danger zone of demographics and debt is just the universe naturally clearing space for our transition into a synthetic, spiritual era. The cross of planning is ending because we don't need to plan anymore. The ASI will do it.
Well, I think we have perfectly drawn the battle lines here, and it highlights why this topic is so consuming. We are both looking at the exact same focal point, 2027, and the exact same disruptions in energy, economics, and technology, but we are filtering them through entirely different lenses. For my part, I stand firm on the empirical reality of the physical compute wall. We are trying to power an exponential future with a broken grid while facing massive labor shortages and $1 trillion bubble, and I believe the rest of the doomsday singularity hype is just apophenia.
finding shapes in the clouds because we are terrified of how fast the world is changing and we want a grand narrative to comfort us.
And I stand firm that viewing this monumental shift as just a supply chain issue is the greatest blind spot in human history. The arrival of ASI through recursive self-improvement, perfectly timed with ancient timelines like the papal successions of St. Malachi and the unsealing of knowledge in Daniel 12, proves 2027 is the ultimate threshold. We are moving out of the biological era and into technological and spiritual transcendence. The node is here, and the sleeping phoenix is waking up.
But one thing we absolutely do agree on is that, regardless of the underlying mechanism, the world as we know it is undergoing a radical, irreversible transition right now. The sheer scale of disruption in energy, AI, and demographics guarantees the end of this decade will look nothing like the beginning.
Exactly. The old world is fading rapidly. Whether you believe we blew the electrical breaker of our industrial capacity or the evolutionary timeline mandated our shift into a post-scarcity reality, we are all going through this unprecedented shift together.
And to truly grasp the full scoop of what is coming, you have to rigorously examine both the hard empirical data and the profound esoteric frameworks. There is so much more complexity to explore in this material, and as always, we aren't here to declare a winner. The paper trail doesn't have to end here, but the descent is just beginning. Find us at Paper Trails and Rabbit Holes on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you hunt for the truth. Keep your eyes open. We'll see you at the bottom.